Welcome to Chronicles. We've been in chapter 12, and we find that lots of people are asking him questions, really to trick him. We already know in chapter 12 that they want to kill him, and so they're looking for ways to be able to trick him, to be able to get him into a court, to be able to condemn him. That's basically what's going on. And so we're in verse 13, and it says this. Later, they sent some of the Pharisees and the Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. They came to him and said, "Teacher, we know that you're a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to pay the poll tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we?" But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. "Why are you trying to trap me?" he asked. "Bring me a denarius and let me look at it." They brought the coin, and he asked them, "Whose image is this? And whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then Jesus said to them, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." And they were amazed at him. It is one of those fantastic little things, isn't it? Because they're out to trap him, and he just says like a sentence and shuts them up, really, doesn't he?
Yeah, and this is something that we've seen with Jesus' opponents since the very beginning of the gospel, that they've been looking for an opportunity to trap him and kill him, and they've tried various different techniques in order to do that. And what's striking about this one is I always find there's a number of things about it, but the flattery that they really lay it on thick, don't they? Thinking that Jesus is going to be persuaded or tricked by their comments. And I remember reading a very helpful little slogan about flattery, and I can't remember where I saw it now, but it was saying that gossip is something that you would say about someone behind their back that you would never say to their face. Flattery is something you would say to their face, which you would never say behind their back. And it's just so good. So there's no way they would have talked about Jesus like this in their own courts. No. But when they're with him, they're saying, "Oh, we know you teach the truth. You don't show partiality. You're a very truthful person." And yet actually Jesus sees straight into their hearts, doesn't he? So
straight into their hearts. And they're not even interested in the question in many ways, are they? No. They're trying to trap him. Because if he just says, yes, it's right to pay the poll tax, they're hoping that the people will get really angry and say, "Oh, he's disobeying God." Or if he says, "No, just don't pay it," then they'll be able to go to the authorities and say, "Look, he's a rebel against Caesar himself."
That's right. It's not just an interesting peripheral question. This is quite an important question because, as you say, if he says yes, it's like he's saying, no, being ruled by a Gentile is actually quite a good thing. Yeah. And, Caesar is our ruler. Yeah. Whereas in their scriptures, they would have seen being under Gentile rule to be a departure from what God had wanted from them. Yeah. But if he says no, well, as you say, he's inciting rebellion, isn't he? And so he's on the horns of a dilemma here. But you can see their heart, and Jesus knows their heart, because even right at the start, we're told that the Pharisees and the Herodians are coming together.
They hated
each other. Yeah. And they probably would have disgreed on this issue, very issue.
Absolutely. Yeah. And many others. Yeah. They despised each other, but that's what happens, isn't it? These two parties come together with a common enemy.
They're united by hatred. Yeah. And exactly, yeah.
So Jesus absolutely floors them by saying, "Let's have a look at a coin." He asks them it's like a baby, isn't it? What's on the coin? So a denarius is obviously a coin. And what's the inscription? And he makes them reply. Yes. So he makes them say those words. And then he says, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give back to God what is God's." And it's brilliant, isn't it? And actually, that is how a Christian lives in a political world, isn't it? Because there is the image of Caesar on the coin, or whatever it is, whatever, the paper money or whatever. And and we are imprinted with the image of God. Yeah. And if you live for God, even in a sinful world and a political world, then God has put rulers over us, and we are to submit to. So partly living to God is to submit to even ungodly rulers.
Yeah,
to
that's
some
right.
degree, isn't it?
Yeah, that is right. Yeah, and they're utterly amazed by this because they can't see how he's putting these two things together. But as you say, that's the simple, breathtaking application of this, isn't it? We are made by God, and therefore our lives belong to God, and we are to submit ourselves to Him and His words. And part of that submission is recognizing that God has instituted authorities, and that submitting to them is an expression of our submission to God. And all our lives are like that. If we grow up with parents, we grow up under an authority. Our whole lives are lived under authority, and part of knowing God is not suddenly becoming a rebel and rejecting all those institutions, but being enabled for His sake to submit to them.
That, I mean, it's probably one reason why there is so much sort of anarchy that goes on, because we've got rid of God. Therefore, we're only in a world that has injustices in it, and politics that we may not like. Therefore, we've got to go on the streets. We've got to shout our mouths off. We've got to try to rule. And that is a problem with the world right now, isn't it? Whether you're right or left, how dare this government, how dare this system tell me what I don't like?
Yeah.
Whereas when we're following God as our main, because we're made in His image, as we're giving back to God, we can submit even to a system that we don't like, and because there's a higher system we're living for. We understand there's a bigger justice and more freedom and so forth. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. And there might be times in history where, in the face of really grave, wicked injustice or immorality, or if a nation says you can no longer worship Jesus, that our submission to God, our Creator and Lord, takes precedence, really. But those are discussing exactly when that point comes is beyond the scope of this, probably.
Yeah.
But what Jesus is cautioning us against is asking that question in a hypocritical way, and so just sort of posing it theoretically, when actually we're not prepared to submit to anyone except ourselves, let alone God. So,
and there are lots of people ask questions like this, don't they?
Yeah.
So when you're doing a question time, why are you a racist?
Yeah,
that sort of question.
Yeah.
It's a all it is a proclamation.
Yeah.
It's not a question. Why are you homophobic?
Yeah.
It's never really to try to understand
it's
where
inflammatory, isn't it?
It's inflammatory, and that's what's going on here, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But it would be great to have the lines Jesus has on these occasions, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
Okay, well, I think we should leave it there, and we'll move on to the next question that's coming up about marriage.